Hi, everyone. I wanted to offer you a warm welcome from Houston, Texas, and take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Melissa Ferstl. I'm the marketing director here at AutoSol, and I want to let you know how happy we are to see you joining us online today. Just in case you have any questions during this presentation, I want to point out the question mark icon in the top right of the screen. You can click there to submit your questions as we go along. And at the end of the presentation, which is expected to last about 50 minutes, we can take some time to answer those. We will get to as many as time permits, and we're happy to answer all of your questions offline as well. You can just reach out to your salesperson. In the meantime, Cody Anderson, an application support analyst, will be stepping you through the latest and greatest items that the new ACM has to offer. He's part of our technical support team here in Houston and has a deep knowledge of our products. Cody, you ready to take it away?
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cody Anderson, and today I'm going to speak to you about our latest release, ACM 8.0. A little bit of history on AutoSol is, in case you're not familiar with AutoSol, AutoSol was founded in 1987 as a systems integrator for the Gulf Coast region of Houston. During the course of executing projects, we saw the need to create a cohesive product which would act as a hub to bring data in from different legacy devices to other systems which need the data. A few of our products that we offer: first, we have ACM, which is an OPC server that delivers real-time and historical data via a single or multiple telemetry circuits and standardized OPC format to any HMI databases or data validation and accounting systems. Now, similarly, we have ACM RT SCADA, which is specifically for real-time data only. Also, to note, some of the features I will be presenting today are going to be applicable to ACM RT SCADA. Moving on, we have EACM, Edge ACM, which is edge-based polling. We can still speak to RTUs and PLCs and their native proprietary protocols. However, when using EACM, we can convert that data to MQTT or MQTT Sparkplug B so that you can get high-resolution data without impacting your network. Moving on, we have OneSCADA. As a tool, this is a tool developed by AutoSol, which provides end users the ability to mass implement, configure, and organize objects in ACM, and also Schneider Electric's EcoStruxure and GeoSCADA Expert. We also have Modbus Slave, which this can provide a Modbus interface to any OPC server, which helps to extend the life of in-place assets. Next up, we have DB Client. This retrieves your requested current value data from an OPC server and provides it in standardized SQL format or SQL format. Next, we have LinePack. This is an energy calculator that performs complex mathematical equations to determine the energy contained between two endpoints of a pipeline. And last but not least, we have hydrocarbon dew point. This calculates the hydrocarbon dew point and the correct condensatherm of natural gas to identify the levels for condensation in your pipeline. Today's agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is we have a little bit that I'm going to be mentioning about on ACM General Security Dashboard. And also we have a little bit about our ACM connection. I'm going to be mentioning a little bit about, for instance, TCP/IP, TCP pool. A little bit about ACM publishing. We're going to cover some output types, PFX, CSV, and we're also going to cover the server object. There's a little bit of changes: item update frequency, auto shutdown. We also have, I'm going to mention a little bit about the server monitor. We have blank password, server information, and I'm going to also talk about some new protocols we added: Teledyne Dresser, Raman Atom, and also some protocol enhancements that we made. Now, moving on, I'm going to now bring up I want to talk about a few things. So we have geared this presentation for users who are familiar with ACM. And if you are not familiar with ACM, we would be more than happy to schedule a one-on-one demo session with you. With the new release of ACM comes brand new features that you can take advantage of to make your data collection more efficient. These new features will also provide more ease of use. And also, so now I'm going to bring over I'm going to X out of this, and we're going to now go over here to the ACM monitor. I'm going to bring the ACM monitor up. So here's ACM monitor, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the ACM monitor. But before I talk about the ACM monitor, we now have a 64-bit version of ACM. And so the main difference between 32-bit and 64-bit, in case you're wondering, is that 64-bit has more access to memory, which this allows programs to smoothly handle many calculations and perform more efficiently on 64-bit processors. Now to dive into the ACM monitor here. So first off, I would like to talk about blank passwords. We added support in the ACM monitor for accounts with blank passwords. In the past, we have had customers who had a system account that was set up without a password. Customers previously had to manually change each process under the Windows services to use the account. And over here, now I'm going to go and navigate to the server information. So it's under the status tab, and there's a server information button right here. I'm going to click on this. Located in the status tab, we added more information to the server information form here regarding platform version and detailed Net4 versioning. If you look at the top of the window that pops up, you will see either a 64-bit or 32-bit, depending on which versions you have installed. As you can see, I'm currently running the 64-bit version, which is mentioned right here. 64-bit or 32-bit so this is where 32-bit will also pop up if you're running 32-bit also. In the .NET section, you will see that the .NET extract version, of which I have 4, be right here, guys. The 4.8 or later. If I had 4.7.2 installed, this is where 4.7.2 would be written. You would see that displayed right here. And this information also will carry over. If I click the copy to clipboard, I'm going to bring up Notepad and show you guys this. So now I'm going to paste into here. Scroll up. If you noticed, the version of ACM that I have installed, 64-bit, carried over to over here through the copy to clipboard, and just above it, underneath the .NET framework, I have 4.8 or later also. Again, this is where the 4.7.2, if you have that installed as well. And these extra details are also visible in the Communication Manager UI version. Now I'm going to minimize all of that.
Make it full screen.
Now we're going to carry on to, I'm going to go over to the ACM Configuration Client, which is what we call ACM Autosol Communication Manager. I'm going to minimize this. Actually, I'm just going to put this in here. And now moving over to there we go. So here we're on the dashboard. A little bit before I start talking about the dashboard. So we're moving on to features that have been added to ACM Configuration Client. In relation to the detailed diagnostic tabs, the tabs and tools that are impacted will also include the dashboard, the archive management tabs, and also the user preferences tool. And so now, right here on the dashboard, we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you a quick overview about it. So this part of ACM, it allows you to view real-time values. These items are automatically added to your items on startup to be pulled when you execute a demand pull manually, or one is done automatically. The values are updated. Have you ever wanted to have a blank slate on your dashboard grid? Well, now you can. We've added the option to select an unassigned view object so that you do not always have to have all of your dashboard items advised when you're launching your client. And so see if you see here, I'm just going to do unassigned. And so now you have the ability to have this selected instead of having one of your views automatically selected at all times. One of the nice features of Dashboard is it allows you to view the items using either their original item OPC name or your custom common alias name as well. I'm going to bring my view back up. So now while we're up here and we're close to it, we have Archive Management tab right here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Archive Management. This tab helps you see if your history collection is current. Basically, it performs a calculation of how many records are missing in the last 45 days based on the last collection for hourly and daily. This calculation is performed on a periodic basis that you can configure automatically by invoking the processes manually. You can use this screen also to drill down and see your historical daily, hourly events and meter configuration in a tabular format, as well as current meter configuration in a tabular format. And now here I'm going to click on, I'm going to choose Omni. I'm going to go here to the historical, to view history details. So this allows you to get further into your historical records, and you can see the records that exist and actually see how the data is stored. This can be very helpful in setting up changes in archive mapping in some RTUs. And there's also a drop down right here. So as you see, you have your field name, your field ID, and there's the raw values and translated values. Whoops. So if I have to click in here and scroll down. Add that. So now, while we're up here, now I'm going to go over here to the configuration tab, and we're going to go right here to the tools and user preferences. What I want to talk about here is you can use the default datetime format, or you can create your own custom one. All datetime tags and items shown in the client, status panel, dashboard, and diagnostic tag section for the currently logged in user will adhere to this setting. And this is where I'm focusing right now, guys. See, I have custom format set. We made this feature so that you can control a specific format of time you see in your client for datetime tags and items. We also added a pop-up window to show you some examples of various formats you can use. And if you just click right here on the question mark we have, this brings up a window, and it will show you. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. This will show you some examples on formats that you can add to the custom bar right here. And so if you wanted to, what you can do is also say like you wanted to use one of these rather than have to type it all the way in. You can just copy and paste right into here. Let me X out of that real quick. So, and then there you go. Now you have that. It saves you a little bit of time. You know, it's a little bit easy of use. I'll go ahead and save that. I'll change it later. So now moving on, this wraps it up for our talking about the user preference tools, archive management, and dashboard. So now I'm going to move on to the ACM Connections, which involves the TCP/IP and TCP pool objects. So here I'm going to go into my connections, and I'm going to bring up my TCP/IP port object. So here, I'm going to go over here to our port, and so I'm going to be talking about our host address 1 and host address 2 here. So we added the host address 1 and 2 found in the TCP/IP object as standard OPC items that will be updated when a configuration occurs and reflects what is typed in the field. And so now I'm going to bring up, to illustrate this, I'm going to bring up OPC test client, and I'll bring this over here. So now we're going to add the item. I'm going to navigate down to my connections, and here's my TCP/IP port object, and here's my connection items. If you notice, I have host address 1 and host address 2 to choose from. So I'm going to choose host address 1, and I'm going to add the item, and now I'm going to click OK. And if you saw, it immediately now reflects my IP address from the host address 1. And it is written right here in my OPC client. So now moving on forward, I'm going to minimize this. Now we're going to talk about the TCP pool port object here. We added communication statistics to this for each port within TCP pool, within the TCP pool port object. This feature is only available, by the way, when moving to ACM 8.0 and above. This changes the ComStats table in the database to now record statistics per point or per port on the TCP pool object. You'll still have your main ComStats for the TCP pool, but if you have 48 ports in use, you would have each individual port statistics as well. And now this wraps it up for our connections. I'm going to now move on to our ACM publishing. We're going to mention a little bit about some of our output types. First one up to plate is going to be the PFX object. So here we added new fields for the PFX output type object, and so the fields here include under the prove report tab, we added resultant K factor, meter flowing density, and the totalizer. And under the prove run tab, we added flow rate under prove identification, pipe material, base prover volume, upstream and downstream. And also under the meter ID tab, we added the K factor and proving mode and also prover location. Now moving on to the next output type, it's going to be the CSV object. Here I'm going to talk a little bit about our file delimiter right down here. So instead of creating multiple new output publisher types to change the file delimiter, the CSV output type publisher was updated to include a new option to allow you to choose your own file delimiter. And the options here include, as you can see, we have comma, tab, pipe, and colon. And this is now represented in a new drop-down option under the CSV tab. And now moving on, I'm going to now talk about Afm Data. So bringing up the Afm database object here. So we also modified ACM to only publish records with Afm fields to respective Afm output types. For example, FlowCal transaction queue, AutoSol Afm database, and also PGAS. This means that any records that do not contain an Afm field will no longer be output to Afm output types that would result in what appeared to be empty records. Moving forward, now I'm going to travel down to the transaction queue, bring this guy up, and here we added an option to the FlowCal transaction queue publisher to set a custom floating point precision. This new option is right here underneath the queue records tab, and it's under numeric precision. So here we'll just choose custom, and here you can now adjust your precision. And also to note, this feature is available in most of our other publishers to allow you to automatically format floating point decimals. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to now travel down over here to the server object. I'm going to bring the server up, and we're going to travel here to the server tab. So there's an option here that is labeled item update frequency. As you can see, it's further down on the page. And so a little bit about this new feature, the default setting is to update only when the value or quality changes. The new option allows you to control how often ACM updates values for items and tags subscribed through the custom items server interface. Items and tags can now be updated exclusively when their value or quality changes, or they can be updated on every pull. Prior to this, whenever an object's tags were pulled, we would update the quality, value, and timestamp regardless if a change occurred through our item server service. With this change, we also add to our persistent data, saving both the last time the value changed as well as the last time we pulled the value. When persistent data is restored, such in the case of failure, we would always show the last pull time. Now we can show the last time the value changed. This change also fixed a bug at how long we stored persistent data. If deleting persistent data is turned on, it will delete data based on the last pull time. And while we're here on the server tab, I'm going to now navigate up to the auto shutdown. So under here in the server tab, there is a sub option called shutdown, even when auto pull is enabled. Now what this does is it stops the data server or ASI data even when auto pulling is enabled. And now moving on, I'm going to start talking about the I'm going to clean this up a little bit so that way we don't have too much action going on up here. So now we're going to move on to the new protocols, some of the new toys we added. So within these new protocols, we have 3 of them. We have Teledyne, Dresser, and also the Siemens S7. All 3 of these I'm going to mention first, where they are real-time only. And so first up to the plate will be the Teledyne CA. And let me bring that up so y'all can see it. So here we have a little bit about the Teledyne CA. Is this protocol supports reading and writing of data items, and there's also some further information about Teledyne protocol that are function codes are supported. Are analog input, AI, status input, DI and SI, set point, AO and SP, control output, CO and DO, and also momentary control output, MCO and MDO. And now moving next to the Dresser protocol. So for the Dresser protocol, this is a read-only protocol, and it's designed to provide real-time data from the Dresser micro corrector. Moving on next to the Siemens S7. Bring this guy up for you. So this supports, let me travel to the device tab. So here, this supports the 300, 400, 1200, and 1500 model devices, as well as the 200. This protocol supports the reading and writing of data items, and it is designed for transferring data into SCADA systems via Ethernet. Now moving on to the next 2, I'm going to bring up the Raman Atom. The Raman Atom allows for the support of real-time and historical data collection. And to give you a view, here's the Archive Collection tab. This is for the Raman Atom, where you can do config upload interval, audit upload interval, EFM collection priority. Well, you can set your priority here. And but you could schedule your intervals here, and then there's also areas where you can adjust your limits. And now moving on, we're going to talk about Mercury C350. Let me bring this guy up. So with the Mercury C350, we have support now for the EC350 and also the ERX350 devices. And so both are real-time and historical data. And also for the 350 series devices, we added support for 5 audit trails with 20 items. Also new history, alarm, and event upload commands for faster uploads. And we also have support for secure sign-on on the 350 series devices. We also added support for item addresses up to 9,999, and also for up to 20 audit fields on non-350 series devices. We also added support for advanced meter configuration object, in addition to predefined meter configuration properties read from the RTU. We also added support for reading gas quality meter configuration values. And also, if I travel over here to the device options tab, We also added two options. One is to do EFM upload at the end of a user-initiated demand pull, and also we added the option to always request only new events using the RE command. And I'm going to travel over here to the Archive Collection tab so y'all can see. We could do 5 audits. And now, moving on, I'm going to now talk about a little bit about the protocol enhancements that we made. And so this actually wraps up our what I mentioned about our 5 new protocols that we added. So moving on to the enhancements made to all protocols, including those specifically made to Dnp3, Dnp3 FBX, Eagle, FlowX, Omni, SCADApack, and TotalFlow. So, but first up to the plate is that I want to mention is a feature that affects BSAP, Eagle, Rock, Mercury, and all Modbus protocols. This is where we provided the ability to for the retrieve history and time sync. So to do this, I'm going to bring up the Modbus Omni. I'm going to demonstrate this for you by using the OPC client. So here we have the logger for the Modbus Omni. And what I'm going to now do is bring up OPC test, bring this up, and I'm going to add the item for the OPC test. Oh, for the Modbus Omni to retrieve. So we're in Modbus Omni, scroll down, Modbus Omni, and we're going to go here to extended. Scroll down, we have a retrieve history here. I'm going to add the item. And now if you notice, there's nothing in the logger other than just that. And so here now, we're going to sync right to it, a -1. And that triggered a history retrieval. So now I'm going to minimize that a little bit. So now moving forward, we're going to now talk about the Dnp3 and Dnp3 FBX protocol. I'm going to bring up the Dnp3 real quick. So here we added the ability to read Dnp3 objects by group and index to avoid a large retrieval of data for a small number of items. This is available via an item modifier. And speaking of item modifiers, this is a great opportunity right here that I'm going to travel now to the home tab. We're going to go to the user guide, and I'm going to show y'all. We're going to go and look up. What we're going to do is we're going to search item modifiers for Dnp3. So right here in the home, we have a link to visit our online user guide and knowledge base. There's also a link to contact support. If you need to get a hold of support, we have a link that will take you directly to where you need to go to get a hold of us. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to bring up the internet web browser, and I'm going to bring that over here, and it takes you directly to our Confluence for our ACM user guide. And so here, there's a search bar here. I'm going to type in, well, just to make things a little bit quicker, I already have it typed in. And so I have, so we typed in Dnp3 item modifiers. Now I'm going to search. And so now we're searching our user guide, and it's going to come up with everything that's in relation to the Dnp3 item modifiers. And the one that I'm going to focus on is going to be the 4th one down. So Dnp3 Opc Items right here. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to go into the page that has all the information for Dnp3 Opc Items. As you can see, there's also a quick link to device standard items as well. But here you have protocol items. And then if we keep scrolling down, you have more items that are here with also, item data type descriptions, and there's also examples. And so if we keep scrolling down, we have extended items here, and we even have a little bit on item scaling that involves Dnp3 right here. So now moving on in the Dnp3, I'm going to now travel back over to ACM. We're going to go back here to our configurations tab. And now we're here. So right here, now I'm going to travel to the device tab. So here we added an option to initialize Let me scroll. Oh, no, it's right here. We added an option to initialize class 1 through 3 items with a class 0 pull after communication failure in the Dnp3 protocol. And it is underneath protocol options, which will be right here. And just a note, this is not enabled by default. And now moving on to the next feature I want to talk about is, so this affects both Dnp3 and Dnp3 FBX forms. So as they both support now, both support class uploads. So these fields are found here in the device tab. And so as you can see right here for the class uploads, now I'm going to switch over to the Dnp3 FBX protocol and bring this guy up. We're going to go back to the device tab where we left off on the previous protocol. And so for the FBX protocol, we increased the number of, actually, I'm in the wrong tab. Let me switch over to the meter runs. Here we go. This is where I needed to be. We increased the number of Dnp3 FBX station meters to 24 and made a modification to read history using the new history commands. And so if I scroll through here, I can then go all the way to 24 station meters. So we also, now if I switch over to the archive collection tab here, we also added the option to use the lagging end timestamp for history in the Dnp3 FBX protocol. And as you can see, it's going to be down here. So I have it enabled, but by default, this is not enabled, but you have use end timestamp for history here. And moving forward, we provided the capability to read user-defined objects and also parameters in the Dnp3 FBX protocol. I'm going to go over here to the meter runs, and we also, as well as adding GC rights here, as you can see right here. I'm going to click on this to bring it up. We'll do edit. Go here. So I just want to make a side note. The items for the GC write configured in the gas chromatograph object, they must be FBX object parameters. Also, one last thing I want to mention about Dnp3 FBX is we are working closely with Emerson Remote Automations to support the FBX 3000. And now, moving on to our next protocol, which will be the Eagle. Here we added an option under the device tab. So here we added an option to the Eagle protocol to retrieve history during a call-in to eliminate the need for a second connection to be created for history collection. And this is located under the device tab and under the device options, and it is labeled retrieve history during call-in. And this is also not enabled by default. And now I'm going to travel down to the FlowX, bring this guy up. There we go. So here on the Archive Collection tab, we added the ability to schedule the retrieval of new reports, which is down here in the FlowX protocol. So that way you don't have to do it manually. And this is since users have the ability to define the report names. We saw a need to add this feature for flexibility purposes. And also, we modified the publisher to automatically map the FlowX protocol differential pressure impulses to the correct fields in the CFX file based on the meter type. And now I'm going to move over to the Modbus Omni that we were on earlier for one of the OPC test examples. So here in the Archive Collection tab, we added an option to the Omni protocol to, if the situation occurs, and it's not going to happen all the time, but we understand that it can. And we added the option to prevent DP impulses conflicts by automatically mapping the fields to the CFX file based on the meter type. And so if you scroll down here for that, we have, this is where the option is. Also, by default, this is not enabled. And so
Cody, you muted your microphone. Can you unmute, please?
I apologize about that, ladies and gentlemen. I had no idea that I did that.
Thank you.
So to recap of what I was talking about, we had added an option to the Omni protocol to prevent DP impulses if the situation arises. And so this option is located right here and it's labeled prevent DP impulse value conflicts. And so this is also not enabled by default. And it's also only necessary if the Omni archive is configured to contain both the DP and pulse registers. And we also added support for the Omni version 22 and to handle 32 products and included more defined default EFM registers. And also, while we're here talking about Modbus Omni, I want to also mention about we are also developing support for the Omni 7000, and it's actually really close to being released. So now moving on to the next protocol, it's going to be the Modbus SCADA pack, and let me bring this guy up. So here in the meter runs tab is where I'm going to navigate to. We added the option here to retrieve historical gas analysis records, and we merged them with the corresponding hourly records. And this option is located right down here, and it's also only available if you're collecting hourly records. So now moving on to the next protocol, I'm going to speak about total flow. So here we added additional logging details for total flow devices to show the saved position information for each archive type in order to help troubleshoot problems related to the history collection. And under the device tab, we added an option to total flow devices to stop the publishing of logged periodic records if GC analysis trend retrieval is configured but failed to be collected due to the communication timeout. And so this option is located down here in device options, and it is titled do not publish periodic records if matching GC trend records are not available. And so now this wraps it up for our the protocol enhancements. Now I want to travel over to some of the general enhancements we made within ACM before we go over to our Q&A session. So first, we're going to go ahead and use total flow while we're here. I'll just use this as an example. We added the abort current task and dump item list that you can see right here for commands in our, this is actually for all protocols, by the way. That's what, for the general enhancements. So these commands were previously only available via an OPC client. And if you're unfamiliar with these two commands, like abort current task, this does exactly what it says. It tries to stop the RTU in its current command chain. And in some instances, this could be immediate, but it could also need to finish a few steps first. The second one, the dump item list, this will print all currently advised items to the logger for the device. I'll switch over here to the configuration. Right here, I'm going to jump down here to the logger. And if you notice, I know a lot of you are aware of just tapping in Control-M for your markers. Well, we added a button. We call it the pencil, and the button's right here. You can click that. It does the exact same thing as Control-M. We added this for more ease of use. And now I want to travel here while we're here on the total flow. Here's underneath the connections tab. We're going to come down here to our connection options section. And so here we added a feature that will prevent a bad quality update to be sent to an OPC client until a pull is attempted on the secondary connection. And so this is done in the case of a COM failover from a primary connection to the secondary. And also, in order for this feature to be in effect, there's three things that have to be met for criteria in order for the effect to take place. First, you're going to need switch to secondary here on failure to be selected. And because you have primary, secondary, then you have switch to secondary on failure. The second one is you're going to need the feature to be enabled, which is delay bad OPC item status updates until secondary connection pulls. So you'll have to enable that. And then third, you're going to need a secondary connection configured here. And then, but once you have all three of those, then the feature will be in effect. And so a little bit more is to ensure that no bad quality statuses are sent. Failed polls will not send a bad quality update for items. Instead, once the poll on the primary connection is complete, ACM will then trigger a poll on the secondary connection for the same task at the same priority. Item updates will occur normally while on the secondary connection also. And so this wraps it up for that on the connection part. I'm going to go ahead and X out of that, and then we're going to click now. And so now I'm going to switch over to what I want to now finally talk about is we have security. I'm going to bring this up. Okay, so if you notice, there's a role tab when you click on this, and to add that, I'm going to show how to add it. So here we would add a role, and then there's also a user you can add. But here for the role, it's the same icon as I have labeled there, but here it's role 1. I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and we're going to go back over here to the one that I have titled for logging only. So finally, security here has been revamped completely in the way that we grant privileges to users. You can still set security at a high level, such as delete all and update all as before. However, now you can set it at a very granular level, and which is such as deny and grant changes on specific properties. If you deny a user a global privilege such that they cannot modify any devices, but you grant them the privilege to modify logging settings for, say, a Mercury protocol. The specific configuration will override the global as we use the security closest to the action being done. This would allow the user to turn on and off logging for Mercury devices only. Another thing to know about the security, the new security, is when setting up commands, you cannot set up specific commands to include or exclude until you have at least one object defined in your ACM configuration. So I'm gonna, what does all that mean? Let me explain by going into the commands, commands meaning right here, execute command privileges. So I'm going to focus on Omni since I have an Omni configured. So we're going to go here. I'm going to bring up specific, and you could choose either accessible or inaccessible. We'll just leave it at that. And I'm going to hit edit. Now, if I go down to we're going to scroll down here to the Modbus Omni. There it is. If you noticed, I had a table that just populated. So to unlock that, you'll just go to specific. And you can scroll down. This brings up all the commands for your Modbus Omni protocol. Now, let me choose a device that I do not have in my tree. If you notice, I don't think we saw a Kimray at all today. Let's check for a Kimray. And, oh, there it is. There's nothing populating for the command. That's because I don't have at least one advised in my tree for my ACM configuration. Now, if I go over here, I'm going to cancel out of this. What we'll do here is we're going to add the Kimray device. So now we have a Kimray device. So now we're going to go back over here, and I'm going to click Edit. We're going to scroll down to the Kimray. And if you notice, now we have the commands that populated. So that's to shed a little bit of light on what I was all talking about there. And ladies and gentlemen, now that wraps up my side of the presentation. And now I would like to throw it over to one of our team members, Mike Standal, who is going to talk about ACM Mobile Client.
Yeah, thanks, Cody. I'm Mike Standal. I'm one of the development team members here at AutoSol. I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about a new tool we have to offer called the ACM Mobile Client. As you can see, there's some of the screenshots there that Cody's going to show you. What it is it's a mobile application suite that's going to work with your existing ACM server. So it has two major parts. It has a mobile application piece that you see the screenshots here for, and that runs on a phone or a tablet. And then you have a back-end server piece that communicates with your ACM server. So, and what it'll do is it'll bring features that will really help you when you don't have access to a full laptop or a desktop configuration client. An example would be like when you're commissioning new field equipment on site, or maybe checking reports while you're away from your laptop or your desktop. So for availability, we have it as an Apple store for iOS. That means the iPhone or iPad are supported. And we also have it on the Google Play Store, and that would be for your Android devices or tablets. The backend piece, server tools, are available for download directly from us. And those work in 64 and 32-bit versions of ACM. And we also have an online user guide that will guide you on the setup and configuration, as well as how to use the mobile application. So I'd like to briefly touch on three main features. The first one will be security. So this application communicates using a secure encrypted channel to and from the mobile server. So that traffic is protected while it's in transit and on the device. It uses your existing ACM security, as Cody was showing you before. So those rules that you have set up for users, those are enforced on the mobile device as well. Our backend configuration tool allows devices to be authorized and unauthorized based on a unique mobile identification number. So that gives you freedom to turn on and off a device. Say if a device is lost or gets decommissioned, you can remove that configuration so that phone does not have access. It's also session based. So the session length, which means how long a user can stay connected to ACM and pull information, as well as inactivity timeouts, those are determined by that backend configuration tool that you can control. The second feature would be reporting. So you can access all the same reports and view everything that you could on the desktop client. And what we did is we created a mobile-friendly format that facilitates a report of any size, any number of columns, and allows you to view it on a mobile screen with minimal scrolling. The reports also support parameters. So just like the desktop client, you can narrow information down by date, time, object, that type of thing. The third feature I'd like to talk about is the device search and detail. So you can search for a device using keywords. Then once you've found that list, you can drill into an individual device or search results and view some key device properties. Our backend configuration tool will let you decide what properties you want mobile users to see per protocol. You can also ad hoc poll a device using an alias group of your choice. So those items would be one-time demand polled, and those values returned back to the mobile device for a real-time scan of those alias items. You can also send requests to the server to have it execute commands on behalf of the mobile client, like demand or test communication, right on the device. And then you can see the results of the request are sent back to know if it was successful or not. So we encourage you to give this a try and let us know what you think. I appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand things back over for our Q&A session.
Hey, great presentation, you guys. Thank you. You reviewed a lot of information in our short time, and we had a lot of questions come in. So you ready to be put to the test, Cody?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I had an attendee named Jason who asked, are user permissions global or can they be more granular?
Yes, they you can limit based on folder or protocol and also command.
Okay. Thank you. I also have a question. I noticed the summary process bar on the bottom of the archive management screen and was wondering how often is it run and why do I need to invoke it?
That's a really good question. When we calculate the missing hourly and or daily records for the system, let me bring up ACM so that way we can look at ACM.
Thank you.
So here's ACM, we'll go over here, so archive management. So what you were asking is down here. So, okay, when we calculate the missing hourly and or daily records for the system, we look back at all the EFM and history data for the last 45 days. Depending on the number of devices and the type of data that is collected, that could put a temporary high utilization on the SQL or SQL temporary database. It shows up in Microsoft Azure usage, and when paying by utilization, this could be something to look at. So by default, we have this set to run once an hour at 50 minutes past the hour. You can, however, change this to recalculate once a day, such as maybe after your morning poll is finished or every hour. The default or just never, and just always do it on command. We also allow the on command so that those users that are trying to recollect missing EFM can also invoke the calculation when they want to versus waiting for the process to run again. So basically, the summary bar, it lets you know what at what point the data you are looking at was calculated for. So if you had it set up to say to calculate once a day at 9:20 a.m., you could go in, see what devices had any missing records, maybe what devices didn't pull, and allow your SCADA team then to figure out some issues, and then around say 1:30 p.m. You can invoke the process again to see if anything has been resolved.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that thorough answer. I also had somebody submit a question. She said, I'm not a user of ACM. How can I get a demo license to test it?
Yes, you can actually download a demo version of ACM from our website, autosoln.com. And once you download ACM, it will run for 30 days for 25 devices. Okay,
excellent. Okay, I had an attendee named Mike who noticed that in ACM 8.0, there are now 2 protocols listed for the Honeywell Mercury protocol. Can you please tell me why?
Yes, there's a Honeywell Mercury protocol that's called new. Let me go over to the configuration and we'll look at that. So here's Mercury. So if I was to add a device, and we'll go here to the device. So here you see Honeywell Mercury protocol, and then there's Honeywell Mercury new. The reason why there's a new protocol, and that's because the protocol had to be rewritten in order to incorporate the updates to our protocol framework needed to support the EC350 and the ER350. We do offer a database script that can convert the devices in the configuration to use the new protocol. And if you are interested in that, please contact support so that way we can discuss this further.
Okay. I had someone ask when the next release of ACM is.
The next release of ACM, so AutoSol has biannual major releases of ACM, one in January and also June. With maintenance releases mid-cycle. So actually our next release is planned for next month.
Okay, great. How had a user ask, if my ACM is not connected to the internet, where can I find the documentation?
Okay, the documentation for ACM, there's a few ways to get there. First, let me go the long way, and then I'll show you the short way. So first way is to, when ACM that's installed, I'm going to bring up so what we're going to do is you'll click on your File Explorer, and then you'll just navigate here to Users. And then you'll go here to Public, and then underneath Public Documents, there's an AutoSol folder. You're going to click on that, and then there's a Communication Manager folder. And then also then there's a Documentation folder. And then this takes you to our installed user guide. And now the short way, minimize that. The short way is to click on your Start button, and for Windows 10, you can just click on ACM Documentation right here, and it will take you directly there. And if you notice, let me maximize this. If you notice, the pathway is the exact same that I did the long way. Also, a side note too that I want to make here is, say your client, since you're offline, our user guide has a mobile-friendly format. And so you can actually access this at ease of use on your cell phone as well. And another thing, too, that I want to mention is our online user guide is the most recent, and it's also the easiest to navigate. As you saw earlier, when we were doing the Dnp3 item modifications or item modifiers, there's a search bar right there, and it brought up a lot of results for the search.
Okay, I feel like I have time for one more question. We've received several questions that have come through, but unfortunately the people that have requested them, their name says anonymous. So if you could go back and give me your name or email address, we'll get those questions answered for you offline. Our last question, somebody asked, can you explain more about the color bar indicator and tags that were on the device configuration tab? My ACM doesn't have this.
Okay, so let's go to the total flow. Right, okay, so up here. So I chose the total flow because from what it sounded like, well, I have an alias group made for this one. And so with the status up here, there's a drop down for this. Also, there's a mention in our user guide for the color status. Well, green is the poll is successful. If it's yellow, your poll is interrupted or incomplete. If it's red, then that denotes a communication error or a poll failure. And if it's black, that means the port's closed or disabled, or you just haven't polled yet. And so another thing that I want to point out is here, what I have, the reason why I chose total flow is because I already have these adjusted. But by default, let me bring up one that's default. We'll go to a, let me see, I think Omni. So if you see, by default, it's these. And so to adjust those, there's these diagnostic tags right here, 1, 2, and 3 underneath your options tab. By default, we have them at this hour, percent good polls, last hour, percent good polls, and last poll success time. Now, going back over to the total flow, I have them changed a little bit. I did leave last poll success time there. And if you noticed, back whenever we were talking about the user preferences, I just want to bring that up real quick because you notice it's just 2020 in May. Well, that was because on the user preferences, we left that as the year and month. Just to show you guys, a little bit about that. But on here, I have contract hour and barometric pressure assigned underneath mine. And you can just type in any item name in here and it will populate up there.
Excellent. All right. Well, that is clearly all the time we have for questions today. Fantastic information. Thank you so much, Mike Standal. Happy birthday. And then thank you, Cody. If your question wasn't covered, feel free to reach out to your salesperson or drop us a line at info@autosol autosoln.com. Again, we appreciate you spending your time with us, and I hope you have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, guys.